Okay, let's unpack this. Welcome to the deep dive. You sent us some fascinating sources about international relationships, specifically focusing on couples where a Japanese woman partners with a foreign man. It's a topic that seems to be, well, coming up more and more, and your sources really dive into some key questions about it.
That's right. Yeah, based on the articles and notes you shared, there are, I think, 5 big questions that kind of jump out. Things like, why are we seeing more of these couples lately? What is it that foreign men find attractive about Japanese women? And can hearts really connect when there's a language barrier? How do they handle cultural differences without, constant conflict? And maybe most importantly, what are the secrets to making these international relationships actually last?
Exactly. So our mission for this deep dive is basically to take the material you've provided and explore those questions directly, pulling out the most interesting insights we can find. It's definitely complex, a mix of global trends, cultural stuff, and obviously very personal connections. So let's just jump right in and see what the sources tell us. All right, so let's start with that first big question. Why the increase? Why are we seeing more Japanese women and foreign men finding each other, forming couples? What do the sources point to?
Well, the most obvious factor mentioned is simply, increased global movement, globalization, right?
Yeah.
More Japanese people are living, studying, working abroad these days.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, you've got more foreigners coming to Japan, long-term residents, students, and yet that huge surge in tourism means people are spending more time here.
Right. It just creates more chances to meet. Pure opportunity.
Exactly. More opportunity for those cross-cultural encounters.
And it's not just meeting face-to-face, is it? The sources really highlight how technology has, completely changed the game here.
Oh, absolutely. Think about it. Dating apps, matching apps, online language exchange.
Video calls.
Yeah, video calls. These tools make it incredibly easy to connect with someone halfway across the world, and then maintain that connection despite the distance, despite time zones. It's broken down geographical barriers that were pretty huge not that long ago.
Definitely. So beyond just opportunity, though, what about the attraction itself? The sources seem to dig into why people might actually be looking outside their own culture.
Yeah, they do. There's a suggestion that perceived differences in relationship values and styles can be a big draw. So compared to how relationships might typically work within Japan, some sources point out that foreign men might express affection more openly, maybe more directly.
Okay.
And that could be appealing to some Japanese women.
And it's interesting, one source even mentions this perception, and it stresses it's a perception held by some foreigners that Japanese women can be quite restrictive or controlling.
Ah, okay. So like an image they have.
Right.
The source warns against being controlling, obviously, but notes this image as a perceived difference that might factor into why some foreigners are interested. Maybe they're seeking a dynamic they imagine is different.
Huh. That adds a layer, doesn't it? Suggests attraction isn't always based on, perfect understanding, but sometimes on these desired differences, whether they're real or just imagined. The sources also get into specific cultural interests, too.
Oh, yeah? Like what?
Well, loving Japanese culture, anime, food, traditional arts, even fashion. That can create a natural starting point, right? Some common ground for couples.
Yeah, like having shared hobbies or passions right off the bat. That makes sense. And of course, personal preferences about looks or just someone's overall vibe or atmosphere play a role, like in any relationship. But beauty standards do vary around the world.
And if you look at the bigger picture, the overall increase in international marriages in Japan is part of this trend, too. It's just becoming more visible, more accepted as a way to form relationships. And your sources actually gave a really specific, fascinating case study, the big jump in Japan-Korea international marriages.
Oh, right. Yeah.
It mentions a Korean statistician linking this rise to revitalize youth exchange programs, which is pretty interesting given, the historical, political stuff between the countries.
Yes, and the sources really detail how this wasn't always the case at all. Back in the 90s, early 2000s, these couples were apparently quite rare.
Why was that?
Well, reasons cited include economic differences, much less cultural exposure before Japan lifted bans on importing Korean culture, and even some bias related to certain religious groups was mentioned.
Wow. But then things really shifted, according to the source.
Dramatically. The Korean wave, K-pop, it just exploded in popularity in Japan, especially after the 2002 World Cup. That apparently increased positive feelings among Japanese women towards Korean men.
And on the flip side,
well, you had Japanese women debuting as huge K-pop idols, and then high-profile Korean male celebrities marrying Japanese women. Names like Lee Ji-hoon or Shim Young-tak were mentioned. that help normalize things, maybe even idealize these pairings a bit.
And the recent travel boom to Japan has also played a part?
Seems like it. Increased interest among some Korean men who've actually experienced Japan firsthand. There's one anecdote shared in the sources that's particularly telling. A Korean man married to a Japanese woman admitted he actively looked for a partner who fit a certain ideal image he had.
Oh.
Yeah, he specifically mentioned like Sana, referencing a famous Japanese K-pop idol.
Wow, that really shows the power of media and, idealization.
Totally. Though, to be fair, the same source also includes some more, let's say, cynical takes from some Korean women.
Okay.
Suggesting maybe some Korean men are idealizing Japanese women partly out of frustration with dating dynamics back in Korea.
Ah, okay. A different perspective.
But it also balances this. It mentions a Korean woman who prefers Japanese men because they genuinely share hobbies like travel and fashion. So it shows it's not always about ideals or frustrations. Often it's just finding someone compatible through things you both love.
Right. So it seems this increase is driven by a whole mix of things. Big global shifts like travel and tech, changing cultural vibes often pushed by media, and then just really personal, varied reasons why two people connect. It's quite a rich tapestry, as you said. So moving from why these relationships are increasing, let's dig into that second big question you raised. What specifically are foreign men looking for? The sources offered an interesting comparison here with preferences sometimes discussed, in the Japanese dating scene.
Right. Yeah, one key contrast highlighted is this idea of independence. The sources suggest that, maybe in the Japanese market, there's sometimes a value placed on ordinary or modest or maybe healing types who might rely more on their partner.
Okay.
Many foreign men, according to this material, seem to prefer women who are independent, who have strong opinions.
The idea being they respect a partner who can stand on her own 2 feet.
Exactly. Someone who contributes equally, perhaps.
But the sources added a really interesting twist to that.
Yeah, that nuance was fascinating. Even among foreign men who say they want independence, there might be this sort of subconscious desire for a partner who's maybe more submissive, or someone who will cater to them a bit.
So the desire to feel needed, or maybe to lead, isn't necessarily tied just to nationality.
Seems like it, even if the stated preference is independence.
Interesting. And this ties into what constitutes a valuable partner, right?
Yeah, exactly. The sources suggest that within certain Japanese dating contexts, there might be a tendency to look for a partner perceived as maybe below in certain factors like age, education, income.
Whereas the sources indicate foreign men are often looking for someone more on the same level, or even higher, intellectually, educational, professionally.
That's the implication. Age seems to be viewed as less important than sharing values, being intellectual equals. Real partners you can engage with on a similar wavelength. Like, if he's a professional, he might actively seek a partner with a similar background.
It really points to a potential difference in the basic view of a relationship, doesn't it?
It could. Is it about finding someone to support and guide, or finding someone to navigate life with as an equal? That difference could definitely fuel some cross-cultural attraction.
Okay, so once people connect, despite maybe different expectations or backgrounds, how do they actually make it work day to day? Let's get into that third and fourth question you brought up, which feel really linked. Can hearts connect across language barriers, and how do they handle cultural differences without it turning into constant arguments?
Yeah, they're definitely connected. And the sources are super clear on this. Communication is just everything, paramount.
And specifically about language.
A sincere willingness to learn the partner's language is highlighted as crucial. Not necessarily becoming perfectly fluent overnight, but the effort.
The effort shows commitment.
Exactly. It shows commitment. It bridges not just words, but intentions, worlds. It deepens the bond.
And beyond just the words, cultural differences will come up, right? They're unavoidable.
Totally unavoidable. And everything from, like, daily habits, taking baths, eating styles, you name it, to bigger things like family dynamics or core values. The sources really stress that it's vital not just to, tolerate these differences, but to genuinely respect and accept them as part of who your partner is.
And one source even suggested trying to enjoy them.
Yeah, which I thought was a great perspective. View them as chances for new experiences, for learning, for broadening your own horizons, rather than just annoyances or friction points.
That mindset shift seems really key.
Definitely.
The sources also talked a lot about communication frequency, didn't they? Especially for long-distance couples.
Very much so. Frequent, even daily contact is advised. Using video calls, maybe sharing locations for reassurance to build that trust, and actively expressing positive feelings. This consistent connection is seen as really vital for maintaining security when you're physically apart.
But what about when things aren't positive? Handling conflict.
Good question. They offer practical advice there too. When negative emotions pop up, it's strongly recommended to, take a breath, cool down before trying to discuss the problem calmly.
Makes sense. Avoid reacting in the heat of the moment.
Exactly. And a very specific tip was avoid sending negative or really emotionally charged messages late at night.
Oh yeah. Why is that?
Well, the thinking is misunderstandings are just much more likely when you're tired, it's dark. Things can get blown out of proportion easily via text late at night.
Right. And trust keeps coming up.
Absolutely. Building deep mutual trust is repeatedly emphasized as the foundation for everything else. Trusting your partner helps ease anxiety, especially with distance. It's key for a stable connection.
There was also that interesting point about cultural differences around milestones, like meeting the family.
Oh yeah. The sources note that while maybe in Japan, being introduced to a partner's family often signals a really serious marriage-focused relationship, foreign partners might introduce someone to their family a bit more casually.
So it's still serious, but maybe not the same immediate "we're getting married" expectation.
Potentially. It's still seen as a sign of seriousness, but perhaps carries slightly different weight regarding immediate marriage expectations compared to a traditional Japanese context. Just something to be aware of.
And we saw a really powerful example of the deeper challenges cultural differences can bring in the sources too. That anecdote about the Korean husband.
Ah, yes. Married to the Japanese woman.
Yeah. He talked about the real difficulties their child faced, not just with learning two languages, but the emotional stress from how Japanese history is taught in Korean schools, and the questions the child got from other kids about their mom being Japanese.
That really highlights how cultural differences can intersect with heavy historical context and societal views, creating significant real-world challenges for the family.
Yeah, it makes it clear that navigating these differences isn't just about personal habits, like how you take a bath.
Not at all. It can involve dealing with ingrained historical narratives and external social pressures. It requires a really deep level of understanding and probably a lot of resilience as a couple and family.
Okay, so given all these dynamics, all these potential challenges, the different expectations, the communication hurdles, the cultural stuff, what do the sources say are the absolute must-dos? What are the secrets to making these international relationships not just happen, but actually thrive long-term? That was your fifth key question.
Right, bringing it all together. The sources really emphasize several core pillars for long-term success. First and foremost, as we've touched on a lot, is that consistent, open, frequent communication.
Really talking and listening.
Yes. Actively expressing feelings, making sure you're both understanding each other.
And underpinning that communication is trust, right?
Absolutely. Building and maintaining deep mutual trust. It's called the bedrock, especially if there's distance involved.
And the cultural differences.
Respecting, accepting, and ideally finding ways to genuinely enjoy the cultural differences comes up again and again. It's essential for preventing friction and actually enriching the relationship over time.
What about looking ahead?
Crucial factor mentioned. Discussing the future and having common goals. The sources say this is vital. It keeps you motivated as a team, helps you work through difficulties together.
And personal independence came up again, too.
Yes, self-reliance and independence are strongly stressed. Maintaining your own fulfilling life, your hobbies, your friends, your own identity, while still deeply valuing time with your partner. It creates a healthier dynamic than being overly dependent. Being mentally and economically independent is presented as the strength you bring.
And the language learning. Still important long-term.
Definitely reinforced. That willingness to try and learn your partner's language, even if you stumble, is seen as a powerful, ongoing sign of effort and commitment that helps keep the connection strong.
For couples doing the long-distance thing, there was a practical tip, too.
Yeah, making concrete plans for the next time you'll see each other. Just having that date circled on the calendar gives you both something to look forward to, provides hope and motivation during the separation.
Makes sense. And revisiting conflict resolution, briefly.
Right. Cooling down first, discussing issues calmly, avoiding the late-night drama, and crucially, the sources warn against trying to control your partner.
Connecting back to that earlier perception.
Exactly. It's stressed that control is just detrimental to a healthy, long-lasting relationship, period.
There was also that interesting point about meeting via apps and the idea of being a high-value woman.
Yeah, and the sources frame that not so much about external validation, but but more about cultivating inner strength.
Like being economically independent.
Yes, having passions, hobbies, genuinely enjoying your own life. This inner fullness and independence are seen as attractive qualities initially, sure, but maybe more importantly, they contribute to building a robust, lasting partnership.
Because you're both bringing your whole independent selves to the table. And related to finding someone, the sources suggested focusing on the connection before jumping into physical stuff.
For long-term success, building a genuine spiritual or mental connection first seems important, no matter how you met. And just being open to meeting people, actively pursuing shared interests through hobbies that naturally increases your chances of finding someone you're deeply compatible with.
So it sounds like making these relationships last involves a lot of conscious, ongoing effort.
Yeah, ultimately the sources suggest it's a mix. Proactive effort in communication and understanding, building trust, navigating that cultural space with respect, and maybe even curiosity. Setting shared directions for the future, and fostering individual strength within the partnership itself.
Wow, okay. That was definitely a deep dive. We've really explored why these relationships between Japanese women and foreign men might be increasing.
Yeah.
We've unpacked what the sources suggest about mutual attraction, navigated some of the big challenges like language and culture, and pulled out those key ingredients for making it work long-term, all based on the material you shared.
Yeah, we've seen it's this interesting blend of big global forces like travel and tech and very personal reasons, influenced by media, maybe history, individual desires, and the path to success, while it has those unique cross-cultural bits, often relies on pretty universal relationship principles, doesn't it?
It's like communication, trust, respect.
Exactly. Shared goals, maybe just requiring a more intentional focus because the differences are more obvious.
And remember, everyone listening, these insights are drawn directly from the specific sources you provided us. They reflect the perspectives and experiences shared in those particular texts. Every international relationship is unique, of course, and individual journeys will definitely vary.
But it does raise a really interesting final thought, doesn't it?
Oh.
Well, if understanding and respecting deep cultural differences, sometimes even historical ones, is explicitly called out as so crucial for making these relationships work, what might we be overlooking or maybe taking for granted, even in relationships within our own culture?
Where the differences might seem smaller on the surface.
Right, but they're still absolutely present, still shaping who we are and how we interact.
It makes you think about all those layers, culture, background, individual perspective that make each person unique. And how much conscious effort it really takes to build deep understanding with anyone, no matter where they come from. Something to ponder.
Indeed, it really is.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.